Throughout their entire lives, most people hear the same story. Work hard, be honest, save a little money, be patient, and when you reach 65, you'll finally be able to rest, enjoy life, and reap the rewards. It's like an invisible script that everyone follows, without even knowing who wrote it. But the scariest part is that this script leads nowhere. Or rather, it does lead somewhere. It leads to a place where a person arrives tired, full of debt, worried about the future, relying on a salary that barely covers the bills. That is, if they still have the health to enjoy anything at all. The truth is harsh, but it needs to be said. Most people work for 40 years or more and still end up with little or almost nothing. This happens to honest, hard-working, dedicated people. And why? Because the problem isn't just the lack of work. The problem is that the way these people think about money, about work, and about wealth is completely wrong. They live believing that effort alone will bring results, that if they do everything right, are punctual, obedient, and loyal, someone will reward them. But that rarely happens. There is an invisible system that is operating all the time, a system that wasn't designed to make anyone rich. On the contrary, it was designed to keep people exactly where they are, busy, in debt, and obedient. This system praises those who work hard, but never teaches anyone to think like an owner. It rewards obedience, but punishes boldness. It says, wait, when in fact life is passing by and time waits for no one. And the most dangerous thing is that this system doesn't use chains or walls. It uses habits. It uses routines. It uses phrases that sound wise, but only serve to keep people trapped. Phrases like, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, or money doesn't bring happiness, or you don't need to be rich, just be healthy. These are small thoughts that keep a person small. They are limiting beliefs that impoverish and sabotage. And worse, these beliefs are passed down for generations, from father to son, from mother to daughter, from neighbor to neighbor. Before we begin the lessons, make sure you've subscribed to the channel. But only do that if you believe you were born to eat the best of this land. If that's your case, write in the comments, I'm ready to prosper. Now it's important to understand something very serious. The world does not reward the most hardworking. It rewards the one who sees the game. It rewards those who understand that work without direction does not lead to freedom. The worker who gives his life to the time clock, who obeys orders his whole life, who waits for retirement as if it were paradise, that worker is being deceived, and when he wakes up, it's often too late. The body is tired, the mind is weak, and the bank account is empty. Many people believe they'll live a peaceful life after 65, but what they find is a pension that barely pays for their medication. That's not freedom. That's a prison with a pretty name. It's a promise that never comes true. And when someone realizes they've spent their whole life following rules that led nowhere, the feeling is frustration. It's as if they traded their soul for a salary, and in the end, even the salary isn't enough. But there is a way out. There is another path, and that path begins in the mind. It begins when a person stops accepting everything without question, when they start to see that there are invisible laws that govern wealth, and that those who understand these laws, who apply them with determination, who repeat them every day, who commit to new habits, can completely change their lives. It doesn't matter where they are today. What matters is the decision to change the way they think. That's why working is not enough. You have to think. Think big. Think with purpose. Think with clarity. A poor mind believes effort is everything. A rich mind knows that direction matters more than speed. The poor work hard. The rich work smart. The poor want security. The rich want freedom. The poor follow rules. The rich create their own rules. But pay attention. I'm not talking about magic. I'm not talking about luck. I'm talking about mindset, discipline, and focus. I'm talking about understanding that wealth begins in the mind. It starts with a decision, a choice, a personal commitment, because those who think like the poor act like the poor, and those who act like the poor live like the poor. But those who decide to change their mindset, change their lives. You need to start watching your thoughts. Pay attention to the words you repeat to yourself. Everything you say often becomes mental programming. If you keep saying, I'll never make it, money is hard, this isn't for me, then your mind will obey. And it will create a reality where nothing works, where money disappears, where everything is hard. On the other hand, if you start repeating affirmations of wealth, of strength, of purpose, your mind begins to build that new reality. Say it out loud right now. I refuse to work my whole life and die poor. I was born to have, not to obey. Say it with strength. Say it with conviction. Your mind needs to hear that from you. It needs to understand that you are taking control. Because as long as you accept a life of effort without results, that's exactly what you'll get. Everything taught so far has one purpose: to wake you up, to open your eyes. Because those who keep sleeping live life on autopilot, and the autopilot of most people leads straight to a life that's tight, tired, and limited. But you weren't made for that. You weren't made to survive. You were made to live, to have, to decide, to lead. The first change happens here, in your mind. Start now. Choose new words. Write down your thoughts. Rewrite your future. You will no longer repeat the cycle of your parents or grandparents. You will no longer accept that it's normal to work 40 years and end up with nothing. You will build wealth starting from your decision to think differently. And if you've made it this far, it's because you're ready. Ready to break the invisible chains. Ready to stop living for others. Ready to leave the crowd of those who wait and join the group of those who build. But remember, thinking differently is just the beginning. Action comes next. Consistency comes next. There is a silent belief that dominates the minds of most people, the idea that time will fix everything, that it's enough to keep working, being loyal, saving a little, and one day, down the line, everything will work out. But what few realize is that time alone fixes nothing. In fact, time only deepens the habits you repeat. If you live on autopilot, doing what everyone else does, thinking what everyone else thinks, accepting what everyone else accepts, time will only drag you down further. That's why so many people reach 65 with the same feeling. I worked my whole life and have nothing. Nothing saved, nothing built, nothing that represents a life of effort. That happens because these people were taught to believe that effort is enough, that it's enough to follow orders, be on time, do everything right, and some kind of reward will come. But that reward never comes, because the system that taught all of this wasn't made to give rewards. It was made to keep people busy and dependent. Look around you. How many people do you know who faithfully follow this model and still worry about money? How many people worked for decades, were good employees, but now live off favors, prescription drugs, installments, promises that are never fulfilled? This is no accident. This is mental programming. It's the result of a lifetime of feeding false ideas about wealth, work, and personal worth. And here's a truth few have the courage to say: the system wasn't designed to make you rich. It was designed to use your time, your strength, your youth, your energy, and then cast you aside when you're no longer useful. This may sound harsh, but it's exactly what happens. You are valued while you're productive. When you stop producing, you become a cost. And costs need to be cut. This is the invisible logic that governs the traditional world of work. So why do so many people remain stuck in this? Because they've been trained to obey. From childhood, school teaches us to stand in line, ask permission, repeat answers, not make mistakes, not question. All of this seems like discipline, but it's actually conditioning. It creates a mental pattern that prevents people from thinking differently, from acting autonomously, from taking control of their own lives. And the result is what you see. Millions of people living in fear of making mistakes, afraid of trying, afraid of stepping out of line, even when that line is leading to the abyss. You need to understand one thing. Those who don't question accept everything. And those who accept everything live through anything. They accept low wages. They accept disrespect. They accept purposeless work. They accept living on little. And worst of all, they think this is normal. But it's not. This is the result of a mind that was never taught to think like a rich person. It was never taught to build, to imagine, to lead. It was trained to obey and wait. But what do you wait for? Wait for someone to come and fix your life? Wait for the government to take care of you? Wait for a boss to see your worth? Wait for, by some miracle, the bills to disappear? That's not going to happen. Waiting is the worst plan. Waiting is the strategy of those who have no strategy. Waiting is the prison of those who have no plan, no purpose. And the more you wait, the more you serve those who don't wait. There's an invisible law that few people perceive. Those who wait, serve. Those who act, command. It's always been this way. Those who decide, those who move, those who create are those who control. Those who doubt, those who hesitate, those who postpone are those who obey. And this obedience is endless, because those who get used to obeying lose the ability to decide. So if you want a different life, you need to think differently. You need to question the phrases you learned from an early age. You need to revise the ideas that shaped your mindset. You need to discard the advice of those who have never achieved anything. And you need to immediately stop thinking, it will get better someday. Nothing improves without change, and no change happens without decision. This is where the power of focused thinking comes in. The mind needs direction. It needs a clear goal, a defined vision, a firm purpose. When the mind is unfocused, it simply repeats old patterns. And these patterns lead you to the same place: scarcity, debt, anxiety, survival. But when the mind receives new commands, it begins to work differently. When you repeat phrases of wealth with emotion, your mind records this as a new command. And this command, if reinforced daily, begins to transform into action, into habit, into results. It's not magic. It's mental programming. It's the conscious use of repetition to create a new destiny. Now repeat after me out loud. I was not made to obey until the end of my life. I was born to build, to command, to prosper. Say it clearly. Each time you affirm this, your mind begins to believe it. And what the mind believes strongly, the body begins to execute. And don't think it's too late. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how many times you've made mistakes. It doesn't matter if everyone around you thinks small. What matters is what you decide to think from now on. You can be the first in your family to break free from scarcity. You can be the first to understand that wealth isn't a matter of luck. It's a matter of focus. You can be the first to transform effort into direction. And that starts with one thought. I no longer accept living as a servant of fear. Wealth isn't about having a lot of money saved. It's about thinking like an owner. It's about acting with purpose. It's about stopping reacting and starting to plan. And planning isn't something you do once a year. It's something you live every day. Every choice, every habit, every word. Everything needs to be aligned with your goal of prosperity. Most people wake up every day and fall into the same cycle. Rushing, working, coming home, complaining about life, and repeating it all the next day. No clarity, no vision, no purpose. And then they wonder why life doesn't change. But the answer lies in actions. If you repeat the same habits of those who live in scarcity, there's no way to live in abundance. You need to decide right now that you're going to stop living as if you have no choice. Because you do. The choice is in your mind, in your focus, in your words, in your habits. Start living with purpose. Start repeating what you want to achieve. Start writing down what you want to live. And repeat it every day, until your mind bows to the new reality you've chosen to create. The mind needs firm command. It needs clear direction. And if you don't give it that direction, the world will find it for you. And the world will always push you toward the same place. Effort without results, work without purpose, life without riches. Say out loud now, my time is valuable. My thoughts are worth more than my efforts. My mind is focused on thriving. And remember, those who wait, serve. Those who think clearly, command. Those who act with faith, conquer. One of the biggest mental traps that keeps people trapped in a life of scarcity is this distorted idea that work itself is an absolute virtue, as if working hard in itself were enough to guarantee a life of wealth, tranquility, and freedom. But this idea urgently needs to be debunked, because it's not hard work that builds wealth. It's the right work. Targeted, purposeful, visionary, strategic. Millions of people get up early every day, brave crowded commutes, endure orders, endure abusive bosses, work overtime, and still live in fear of the end of the month. This clearly proves that effort isn't what creates wealth. If effort were enough, bricklayers, cleaners, delivery people, security guards, and drivers would be among the richest people in the world. But they aren't. And it's not because they're less worthy. It's because they were taught to work, but never taught to think like rich people. And this is the point that changes everything. Those who work without thinking work for those who think. Physical effort in itself doesn't liberate you. In fact, it imprisons you if it's not linked to an owner's mentality. You can spend your entire life sweating, exhausting yourself, being punctual, productive, and still never get anywhere, because the world doesn't reward those who work hard. It rewards those who work correctly, strategically, with clarity. Stop now and think, what are you building with your work? Are you just paying bills? Are you just surviving? Or are you building something that will one day function without you? The truth is, most people work just to put out fires, to pay debts, to keep their minimum bills paid. They work to avoid collapse. They don't work to build freedom. And that's a fatal mistake. The person who doesn't think about what they're building is just turning a gear. They're serving someone else's purpose. They're feeding the system, but they're not feeding their own future. And when they finally realize this, years have passed, decades, and their youth is gone, along with their strength, their energy, their drive. That's why so many people reach 65 and feel empty, because they haven't built anything. They've just worked. They've obeyed. They've fulfilled their duties. They've repeated routines, but they've never stopped to think, what is my life really producing? Am I creating something that will continue after me? Am I building freedom or just surviving? These questions are tough but necessary, and the answer must begin with a decision. To no longer accept selling your entire life for a salary that barely covers the basics. To no longer accept working without direction. To no longer accept repeating the model of those who failed. Because time is unforgiving. Time never goes back. And if you don't change today, you'll reap the same result millions have already reaped. Working your entire life and ending up with nothing. But there is an alternative, and that alternative begins with reprogramming your mental habits. Wealth doesn't start in your wallet. It starts in your mind. It begins when you stop thinking like an employee of the system and start thinking like the master of your own story. When you begin creating new internal commands, affirming every day, my mind creates wealth, my work is directed, my life has purpose. These phrases, when repeated with emotion and conviction, change your identity. And identity is everything, because no one acts against what they believe they are. If you believe you were born to work and pay bills, that's exactly what your mind will produce. But if you firmly believe you were born to prosper, born to command, born to build freedom, then your mind will begin to act according to this new identity. And the key is here. You're not paid for your effort. You're paid for the value you deliver. And value isn't in sweat. Value is in the solution, in intelligence, in strategy, in what you build. A man who understands this stops seeking recognition and starts seeking results. Stops counting hours and starts counting impact. Stops waiting for approval and starts building authority. You need to shed the obedient worker mentality. This doesn't mean being rebellious, irresponsible, or disrespectful. It just means you stop living as a servant of the system and start living as the master of your own path. From the moment you understand this, your entire relationship with work changes. You start to think, what am I building with this? Is this bringing me closer to freedom or further away? Am I just putting out fires, or am I building something that will work for me in the future? The big difference between the rich and the poor lies in this question. What are you building today that can bear fruit tomorrow, even if you stop working? If your answer is nothing, then you are on the path to servitude. But if you decide right now to start building something with purpose, direction, and vision, then you are on the path to true freedom. And the first step is simple yet powerful. Take control of your mind. Decide from now on that you will no longer work just to accomplish tasks, that you will start creating thoughts of wealth, that you will affirm each day that you are building a life of freedom, that you will act with purpose, with clarity, with intention. Say it now out loud with conviction. My work does not define me, my thoughts define me. I am the creator of my wealth. This kind of affirmation, when repeated daily, begins to shape your identity. And when your identity changes, your habits change. And when your habits change, the results begin to appear. It doesn't happen overnight, but it's true, because no one can stop a determined mind. If you're still stuck in the idea that you have to wait until you're 65 to finally live, then you're living a nightmare disguised as a routine, because spending your life waiting isn't living. Waiting for the paycheck to arrive, waiting for the bills to come due, waiting for a chance, waiting for someone to notice you, that's not life, that's prison. And the key to that prison is in your hands. Stop giving up your life in exchange for a salary that barely covers the month. Start building, thinking, planning. Start acting like an owner, not a servant. Owner of your time, owner of your focus, owner of your direction. And never forget, the world doesn't pay for your obedience. The world pays for your worth. And your worth begins with what you choose to think, repeat, and affirm every day. Now say it again. I am the master of my mind. I create my wealth with thought, direction, and purpose. Most people live with a silent hope within their hearts, a hope that if they keep doing everything right, if they keep meeting deadlines, saying yes to everything, not causing problems, being exemplary employees, then one day, maybe one day, someone will reward them, someone will notice, someone will offer a promotion, a bonus, a thank you. But that day almost never comes, and when it does, it's no longer enough, because time has passed, energy has been expended, and the body is already tired. And in the end, all the person has accumulated is experience, but no freedom. This is the portrait of millions of people, silent, dedicated workers who spent decades giving their best to companies, bosses, and employers, and today live in fear of the monthly bill, of a retirement that never arrives, of a health condition that no longer allows them to pursue it. This is what happens to those who give their lives for a system that never promised freedom. It only promised employment. It promised security, but never prosperity. And the promised security becomes in practice a comfortable prison. People are afraid to leave, afraid to take risks, afraid to try something new, because they're used to what's certain, what's guaranteed, even if that guaranteed is small, cramped, and limited. The mind becomes accustomed to living with little, and the most dangerous thing of all is that this becomes normal. Scarcity masquerades as stability. But the truth is clear. If you work for 40 years and end your life relying on a pension that barely covers your basic expenses, then that plan didn't work. It failed. And it wasn't for lack of effort. It was for lack of direction, of vision, of awareness. The mistake is believing that the system was designed to make you rich. It wasn't. The system was designed to keep you useful to the interests of those who truly profit. And this profit doesn't come from their efforts. It comes from repetition, from obedience, from a lack of questioning. Because the more obedient you are, the less you think. And the less you think, the easier it is to control your destiny. Therefore, the first game-changing action is simple. Stop blindly obeying. Stop accepting everything as normal. Stop believing that just because everyone else does it, it's right. This isn't rebellion. This is awareness. It's lucidity. It's mental freedom. And this is what differentiates those who die enslaved from those who die free. Now look, it's not about abandoning work. Work has its value. What you need to abandon is the idea that work alone will save you. It won't. It's just a tool, an instrument. What truly changes your life is what you do outside of work. It's what you think when no one is looking. It's what you affirm when you wake up. It's the plan you're building in silence. Because there's a huge difference between working for survival and working for construction. Those who work for survival are always reacting. They put out fires. They chase losses. They're always late. They're always exhausted. They're always waiting for the month to end to see if there's anything left. Those who work for construction, on the other hand, have a plan. They have a clear goal. They use work as a springboard, not a prison. Their minds are occupied with vision, not fear. This is where the turning point begins. Using your current job as a tool to finance your future freedom. Even if you're currently in a job you don't love, you can use that salary to plant the seeds of your independence. But to do so, you need to stop spending on nonsense. Stop living on impulse. Stop seeking relief in consumption. Because those who consume without direction are just trying to forget the pain of living without purpose. You need to start saving, investing, learning, planning, and most importantly, repeating phrases every day that shape your wealth identity. Because money never arrives before your mindset. You only receive what your mind accepts. And if your mind is programmed for scarcity, any money that arrives will be gone. It will vanish, it will slip through your fingers. Because the poor mind rejects abundance, it doesn't know what to do with it. It can't bear the discomfort of having something bigger. So before you can become rich on the outside, you need to become rich on the inside. You need to repeat every day with emotion, I accept living in abundance. I am worthy of wealth. I am building my freedom. These affirmations, spoken with emotion and consistency, reprogram your behavior, and the right action, supported by the right thought, produces the right results. But this requires something few are willing to do: consistency, repetition, discipline. Because the mind only changes when it receives the same command repeatedly, with force, intention, and clarity. And here's a truth that can hurt. Those who don't build their own freedom are building someone else's wealth. Every time you give without direction is helping someone else achieve a dream, one that isn't yours. Every energy you expend without purpose is feeding the system, which doesn't enrich you. Every unquestioning obedience keeps you stuck in a pattern that ends up in the same place. 65 years old, a tired body, little money, and a lot of frustration. But you don't have to follow that path. You can decide right now to do things differently, to think differently, to act differently. You can decide that your story won't end like most, that you won't live as a slave to your wages, that you won't depend on the government's goodwill or the luck of your retirement. You will build your freedom with strong thinking, clear habits, powerful affirmations, and targeted actions. Now say out loud, "My life is under my command. My future will be written with clarity, decisiveness, and richness." This internal decision, reinforced every day, is what separates those who live with purpose from those who merely survive. And every day you waste repeating the pattern of scarcity is one less day building your freedom. So don't wait any longer. Start today. Start now. With thought, with silence, with a notebook, with words. Start by affirming that you were born for more. Start by stopping repeating phrases that weaken you. Start by observing your habits, because what you repeat, you become, and what you tolerate, you live. Don't accept living like someone who tries hard and never gets there. You will get there, because you've decided you will. And a true decision is stronger than any obstacle. Say it again. My mind no longer accepts scarcity. I am building wealth with purpose, thought, and decision. There comes a time in every human life when something inside screams. A silent scream, muffled by the noise of the world, but which, when listened to carefully, says, "It wasn't meant to be this way." This scream arises when the soul realizes it's being exchanged for bills, when the days begin to resemble one another too much, when work no longer makes sense, but gets done anyway, when it's realized that effort has become routine, but has not turned into reward. Most people ignore this cry. They distract themselves with social media, food, and commitments. They sweep this discomfort under the rug of responsibility. After all, everyone lives like this, right? Everyone has bills, everyone works hard, everyone waits for Friday, everyone counts down the days until vacation. But this normality is the real poison. Because being normal today means living in fear of the end of the month, depending on a paycheck, and hoping that one day life will improve. But the cry is right. It wasn't supposed to be like this. A person shouldn't spend the best years of their life doing things they don't like, with people they don't respect, in a place that doesn't value them, just to pay bills and keep up appearances. Someone shouldn't give up 40 years of their life in exchange for an uncertain end, with an exhausted body, a weary mind, and a frustrated heart. That's not life. That's a form of modern slavery. And the cruelest thing is that it's silent. And this slavery isn't created by shackles, but by habits, by repetition, by small choices that over the years add up to a wasted life. Waking up on autopilot, eating whatever comes your way, working without thinking, repeating phrases of defeat, complaining without changing, watching without learning, spending without building. These attitudes, repeated day after day, form a cycle that traps people in the same place, even when they try to escape. And perhaps this is the hardest point to understand. Effort isn't enough. Effort without direction is wasted. It's possible to run all day and still remain in the same place. It's possible to work hard and still be poor. Because what changes the result is not the quantity of effort, but the quality of intention. The poor mind doesn't understand this. It believes that the harder you try, the more you deserve, that life will reward those who fight hard. But the universe doesn't respond to blind effort. It responds to clear intention, conscious action, and purpose-aligned thinking. A person who works without clarity doesn't build. They merely repeat. They obey. They survive. But they never prosper. So you need to stop right now and ask yourself a difficult question. What is my life building? If the answer is, "I'm just trying to make ends meet," then it's a sign you're stuck in a cycle that doesn't lead to freedom. And cycles don't change on their own. They need to be broken, with awareness, with decision, with clarity. The first thing to do is clear your mind of the clutter that's been stored there over the years. This clutter comes in the form of limiting beliefs, such as, "Money is hard. I wasn't born to be rich. I have to be content with what I have. A secure job is better than taking risks. Those who want too much lose everything. These phrases are camouflaged poison. They've been repeated for generations, and worst of all, with the best of intentions. Parents, teachers, neighbors, all wanting to protect, teach, warn. But without realizing it, they were planting limits in the minds of those who heard them. And these limits became reality. They became invisible walls that prevent people from thriving, even when they try. So the second step is reprogram. Every day when you wake up, before touching your cell phone, before getting out of bed, you must say to yourself, I was made to thrive. My mind attracts wealth. My work builds freedom. My thoughts are my greatest asset. Say it with emotion, with firmness, with intention. Because your subconscious doesn't respond to logic. It responds to repetition with emotion. And if you repeat these phrases every day, for weeks, for months, for years, your mind will change. And when your mind changes, your life changes. But be careful. Reprogramming your mind requires persistence. There's no point in saying it once or twice and expecting miracles. There's no magic. There's discipline. There's consistency. There's determination. And there are results. You need to remind yourself every day that your mind is a fertile field. Whatever you plant will grow. If you plant fear, you will reap paralysis. If you plant doubt, you will reap insecurity. But if you plant thoughts of wealth, a vision for the future, and habits of development, you will reap freedom. And this freedom starts small. It begins in your posture, in your gaze, in your words, in your daily decisions. It begins when you stop accepting what is normal and start demanding what is necessary. It begins when you say with courage, I will not live like everyone else. I was made for more. You don't need more diplomas. You don't need more luck. You need clarity. Clarity about who you are, about what you want, about what you need to stop doing, about what you need to repeat every day until it becomes routine, because your routine builds your reality. Now look at your routine today. Where is it taking you? Is it bringing you closer to freedom or keeping you in an invisible prison? Is it creating opportunities or just paying the bills? Is it nourishing your mind with thoughts of wealth or just distracting you from the pain of not living the life you deserve? The answer to all of this lies in your habits. So the third step is create a new routine, a mental routine where you wake up and speak to your mind before the world, where you write down your goals, where you repeat your affirmations, where you study, even if it's just for 15 minutes a day, something that strengthens your vision, where you take control of your focus. And if you think you don't have time for that, then you're already stuck, because those who don't have time to reprogram their minds will have to find time to remain poor. Speak now with conviction. My time is sacred. My mind is a priority. My freedom begins in my thoughts. You can repeat this mentally now, and then write it down on paper. Write it down, read it, feel it, reinforce it, because the brain learns through repetition, and the world responds to your identity. When you see yourself as someone born to thrive, the world begins to adjust. But as long as you see yourself as an ordinary person who just wants to survive, then that's what the world will give you: survival. And survival isn't life. It's resistance. It's constant effort without peace, without respite, without joy. You deserve more, you know it. That's why you've come this far. That's why you're reading these words, because within you lies something greater, a seed of power that has never been watered, but now it has begun to sprout. And with discipline it will grow. It will blossom, it will bear fruit, but it needs your commitment, it needs your clarity, it needs your repetition. So say now firmly, my mind is the soil of my wealth. I plant thoughts of freedom. I reap prosperity. If you want to hear more content like this, click on the video on the screen. Until later,